Hi everybody, it's Patty from Patty Lager ND, and today is June 16th, 2019, and I'm here for the live Q&A. I've already had a few questions that were emailed to me, and I do ask that if you do have a question, make sure you send it to questions@pattylaggernd.com. Some people have been sending me questions elsewhere, whether it be through my website or through Facebook, and I don't know if those are questions meant for the Q&A, like if you want me to discuss it, or if you just have a general inquiry, or if it's something else. So to make it very simplistic for me, I am only going to address the questions that are sent to questions@pattylaggernd.com, because I know for sure those are meant for me to read on this video podcast. So those are the ones I will respond to for those of you who cannot make the live recording. But if you are here for the live recording and you have a question, you can just post it in the comments and I will get to it, hopefully. So I'm going to open up my email and get to the first question. And this first question, let me pull it up. I just had it open just a second ago. Okay, it is from Peter Smith, and I will read his entire email. He said that he slipped and hit, well, I'll read it from his point of view. I slipped and hit my head in February, resulting in a traumatic brain injury, skull fracture, and subarachnoid hemorrhage in my frontal lobe. I was on a mono-orange feast for a couple of weeks prior to the injury, which according to my neurosurgeon is probably why my brain swelling subsided so quickly, so I did not need surgery. Unfortunately, my injuries made it too difficult to continue an all-fruit during my recovery, so I consumed mostly steamed veggies. The first 2 months were very difficult, but I think I have recovered from all of the major symptoms of the brain injury. However, I now have significant hearing loss and tinnitus in my right ear from the skull fracture. A recent CT scan showed no structural differences comparing the left and right ear, and my ENT claims that the hearing loss is sensorineural. Sensorineural. I'm trying to read that word, and but I guess the ENT said that it was based on the sensory neurons, I'm assuming that's what that term means, and permanent. I lost about 2 pints of blood through that ear, and it was swollen and infected for at least 3 weeks after the injury, so that may be part of the cause. I have seemingly random frequencies that are much worse, so I'm guessing those are the hair cells that line, I think I lost my so I'm guessing that those are the hair cells that were damaged. For instance, my worst frequency is 90 decibels, while the surrounding frequency about 5 decibels, and 10 decibels are my best. I believe this at least indicates that the problem is local to the inner ear. My question is, what would be the best strategy to restore hearing? I believe there are experimental stem cells treatments that reportedly restore this type of hearing loss temporarily, so I think I should be able to do it naturally. I expect it may be a long and difficult path. My current plan is to fast mainly on watermelon this summer, grapes when they are in season, and then oranges and lemons during the winter. I'll also mix in weeks of veggie juice fasting. I'm not aware of anyone that has recovered from this type of hearing loss, and I'm still emotionally weak from my injuries. So it would be encouraging to hear from someone knowledgeable that doesn't think it's hopeless. All right, so Peter, I am so incredibly sorry that you had to deal with that traumatic brain injury. And from what it sounds like, the trauma didn't leave any structural damage, but perhaps the sensory neurons, the vestibular cochlear nerve, which does transmit both hearing signals as well as balance signals to the brain. Maybe that was impacted, and you mentioned the hair cells. The cochlea, which is the organ in our inner ear that detects hearing does contain long hair cells, or stereocilia, which bend. And when these little hairs bend, that opens up voltage-gated, I should say mechanically gated sodium channels. Sodium comes in, and that's really what triggers that neuron. So, you know, we can definitely explain, and by the way, I've got my, my neg champa, I think that's what it's called, my incense burning right now, if you see smoke. But, you know, those neurons, those hair cells can regenerate first and foremost. The neuron itself, as long as the cell body wasn't damaged, most neurons can repair the axons, the fibers. Now, for sensory neurons, the cell body is often somewhat connected to or close to those hair cells or those receptors. So there could have been some damage to that sensory neuron or to those sensory neurons that are transmitting those electrical signals. So, but even with that said, and as you know from what Dr. Morse talks about, neurologically, things can repair and regenerate. Just because in the allopathic field, they don't see a lot of nerve regeneration, and so they are forced to look at other modalities like stem cells and whatnot. That doesn't mean it's not possible, okay? And there are, as far as neurological damage, there are cases of people repairing that which they were told was a permanent situation. So how does this happen? Is it a miracle, or is it something they're doing? Can we take control over this? And this is really where I like to remind people that there are always healing possibilities. And I really like what you are going to do with regards to fasting. I think watermelon is so incredibly cleansing. You can juice the entire watermelon, not just the pink fleshy part, but you can get the rind in there for some additional properties if you're going to juice it, or just otherwise eat the fleshy part of the watermelon. Both are incredibly cleansing. And the watermelon especially, when I do extended watermelon feasts, I really feel it in my kidneys. I really feel like they pull. They're so cleansing. They pull so much out of our interstitial spaces. They're really somewhat overloading the kidneys when we do these types of cleanses with watermelon especially. So you definitely want to make sure you're on 2 kidney formulas, on a lymphatic formula. Keep those channels of elimination open. So when you're on that pathway, when you're sticking with the high fruit, so you said you were going to stick with watermelon, followed by then grapes when they're in season, and the grapes will be coming into season. Well, I guess depending on where you're coming from, but I know where I am, usually September. You can get lots of organic grapes, or they're more available at that time. And then following that, you mentioned oranges, lemons during the winter months. I think that's amazing. All of these astringent fruits, rich in electrolytes, the same electrolytes that are helping with what is called the action potential, the electrical signal that's being transmitted down these neurons. This is what we need to fill our body with, those core nutrients that are needed for that signaling process. But not only that, we need to maintain another type of control on this healing process. So I think everything that you're doing is with regards to your diet. That's exactly what I would recommend. But like I said, I would add those herbs. 2 kidneys, a lymphatic. And when I say 2 kidney formulas, if you're going with Dr. Morse's herbs, typically do an odd and an even number, like 1 and 2 or 3 and 4. He's got 4 kidney and bladder formulas, and the odd number ones, formulas 1 and 3, those are the kidney strengtheners. And then the even numbers, 2 and 4, they are more kind of like a diuretic. They're really kind of flushing the kidney. And so Dr. Morse really recommends doing an odd with an even, because you want to strengthen those kidneys while you're helping them cleanse efficiently. And that's going to really help you get the waste out, because whenever we have trauma to tissues, and there's swelling especially, that's trapping things in that area. I mean, the swelling initially is there to protect us from the spreading of pathogens or from the spreading of things that we don't want to pass into our bodily fluids and start circulating in our body. So that's why the swelling's there, but it's also trapping metabolic waste. So there's always a lot of scar tissue and toxic buildup, congestion after any kind of trauma. So doing, like I said, your diet protocol is going to be great. With that said, though, you have to also bring in other aspects of healing. And this is kind of where I'm starting to do a more focused study because, you know, I do have a lot of knowledge about the physical human form, how the body works, and this is what I do full time. I teach pre-medical students, pre-nursing students how their body works, and then they can use that for their future careers. And that's what I'm doing here with you all, is helping you learn about how the body works and with my online Human A&P course. But where I feel drawn are the other aspects of healing, which I think sometimes we overlook or we think, oh, that's not very possible. How can my thoughts, how can smells, how can colors I surround myself, how can that help with healing? Okay, so I was reading your email earlier and I wanted to get a book, and I want to share this book with you really quick. Okay, so The Secret Language of Our Body by Ina Segal. This is very similar to what Louise Hayes has already done. Louise Hayes, who is no longer in her physical form, but she is someone who influenced me quite a bit. And Ina Segal does the same thing. And this is a fascinating book. It goes into that aspect of healing that involves the mental and the emotional. And you might want to look into that. I mean, if you're going on this cleansing protocol, if you're going to really clean out the damage and the congestion and try to then rebuild and regenerate, you want to do something alongside of that that can help you along the way. You may want to also include or incorporate some aromatherapy or perhaps even some incense that could be very cleansing for you. Palo Santo is wonderful, sage. These are all very cleansing types of smells that a lot of shamans use to really help people prepare for release. And it's not just a physical release. I mean, everything that Dr. Morse talks about really helps with the physical release. And we really need to clean those interstitial spaces, those spaces between our cells where things build up, and that congestion then can start to affect tissue function and organ function. So we need to release all of that, but there's an energy within that. There's an energy held within that congestion, and that energy can sometimes be attached to the trauma itself. I mean, what were you thinking when this accident occurred? What was going on in your life? Why was it that the universe brought you to that spot where you had that injury? You know, for myself, I remember in 2015, I fell rock climbing, and that really affected my whole life. I mean, it totally changed everything in my life, that injury. And there was a lot of other trauma along with it, but it brought me to where I am today. It took me off of a path I thought I wanted to be on. And now I'm where I am today, which, you know, we're always trying to better our lives and figure out what we can do, or at least I'm doing this, what I can do to help life on this planet the best way. And sometimes I don't know exactly why it is the universe sends me to these different locations, but right now I'm in the Midwest close to my family, and my family really needs me right now. And I think maybe part of that was the accident helping me to bring me where I am. So I'm not saying that your accident is going to take you to a new place in the country. I mean, I went from the Pacific Northwest to the Midwest. But I do feel like there are no accidents. So between looking at the emotional and what was going on in your life, mentally, spiritually, at that time of the accident, as you're cleansing, as you're taking the time to heal the body and you're meditating, look into that. Ask your higher self, your angels, whatever. There's help all around you. But really it's you. It's that part of yourself, that knowing that you have within you that really can help you get to the heart of your hearing loss in your right ear. So let me just read a little bit from Ina Segal's book about the right ear and hearing loss. These things fascinate me, and so sometimes when I feel it's appropriate, like when I'm doing a consultation with clients and they're stuck, I try to find other things that I think may be helpful. Maybe it's Bach flowers, maybe it's aromatherapy, maybe a homeopathic remedy. And I've done some study in homeopathy, but I wouldn't classify myself as a true homeopath, because to be a true homeopath, you need years of study. So my personal position is a homeopath, because, you know, if I do need something, you know, since I have health insurance, I might as well go to somebody that I think, you know, since I have to have this, go to somebody that I would be more aligned with anyway. So let me read to you what Ina Segal says about the right ear. Right ear, feeling impatient, angry, annoyed, hurt by other people's comments, involved in too much conflict or too many arguments. Feel like you've had an earful, holding on to destructive beliefs from the past, especially childhood, and replaying them. Feeling tired, worn out, dispirited about your life, work, family, and environment. So one thing that Ina Segal says in her book is she gives individuals little meditations to focus on that will be helpful as someone's going through this process. So what might be helpful for you? You can say, Divine Healing Intelligence, I ask you to dissolve all negativity, guilt, anger, resentment, stuckness, frustration, and criticism out of my ears, as well as all points of view, all patterns, and the positive and negative charges that contribute to this condition. Repeat the word clear until you feel the shift occur. Lightly massage your little finger on your right hand from the root to the tip using small circular movements. The ear contains more than 100 acupoints, which can stimulate life force energy and reinvigorate the body. Massage the lobes of your right ear with your thumb and index finger, and start at the top of the lobe and massage slowly for about a minute. I mean, I can continue on reading, but what I'm saying here is that, you know, you kind of know what to do. You know the fruit is going to heal the physical aspect, but there are always things we can add to that as far as helping to get the physical back on board at other levels, the emotional, the mental, the spiritual. And yes, those hair cells in the cochlea can repair themselves. You mentioned in your email certain frequencies that you were unable to detect that you seem to struggle with. Well, the cochlea, which looks like a snail, if you unwind it along the length inside of the middle, what's called the scala media, which is the inner chamber within the cochlea, there is the organ of Corti, also called the spiral organ. And this is the receptor for hearing. And like I said, it has these long little hair cells called stereocilia. They sit in a gelatinous membrane called the tectorial membrane. And when sound waves hit these hair cells bend back and forth. That opens up mechanically gated sodium channels. Sodium comes in. When enough positive sodium ion comes in, then these sensory neurons develop an action potential, which is then transmitted to the areas of our brain where we detect hearing. Okay, so in the temporal lobes, that's where we have the area where we become conscious of what we hear. So whenever there is any problem with hearing, you know, like I said, it could be the sensory neuron, it could be structural damage, but you said on the scans that you've had there were no structural problems, so that's good. It could be the brain and its problem with perceiving it, but it seems like your ENT was thinking more so that it's probably a sensory neuron issue. So the sensory neuron, as long as the cell body is intact, those fibers can repair and regenerate. If the sensory neuron cell body is impacted in any way, could there still be healing? In my opinion, even though what the doctors will tell you is no, I always have hope, and I know that these types of miracles can occur. And this is where these other types of energetic releases come into play. So again, ask yourself, what were you doing at the time emotionally? What were you dealing with? Look at whether it be Ina Segal or I can't think of her name now, but the other woman that looks at the human body, Louise Hay, and focus on those areas of the body and see what energetically you can release. So hopefully that helps, Peter. I'm going to go to the next question that was emailed to me. I do see some people had come into the discussion or to the chat. Hello, Amy, Carlos, Wayne. I guess a lot of where you are. Carlos seems to be somewhere where it's morning. It's 6:22 p.m. here. But good morning to you, Carlos. And hello, Wayne. I hope you all are doing well. I'm going to go, like I said, to the next email. And the next email that was sent to me is from Anna. She writes, Dear Patty, I am so grateful for you and your content and what you're putting out. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I am now at the end of my ISOD Level 1 course. She's taking it online as she lives in Germany. And I am planning to take your course as well because it would be really beneficial for me to learn about the human body. I have some questions for your live Q&A. And because of the difference of where she is, she won't be able to watch it live. So hopefully you'll be able to see this on the recording, Anna. Question number 1, I would like to learn more about iridology. I have read a few books written by Dr. Jensen, but I would like a more hands-on approach. It is difficult to point exactly where the lacunas are and match them to the weaknesses because everything is written, so there is nobody near you that can show you exactly what to look for. I have also seen a few videos where Dr. Morse addresses this, but I'm wondering if you have any other suggestions. Well, Anna, and I'll get to your second question in a second. As far as iridology, I know there are various iridology schools out there, and people can become certified in the field of iridology. I've taken one course in addition to all of the studying I've done with Dr. Morse, which was incredibly valuable. And of course, when I worked with Dr. Morse at his clinic for about a year, I was able to talk with him, with irises that I was studying, and he could help me point things out. I know Dr. Morse isn't a big fan of overlays, but I think if you have an overlay, you can put it on top of an iris photo, and that can kind of help you get your feet wet, as you start looking at these. Keep in mind, structurally, every iris is a little bit different, so, where the kidney area is on one iris might look a little bit different compared to another one. So you don't want to get too dependent on these overlays, but like I said, they're a good place to start. When I do iris readings for my clients, I actually give my clients a PowerPoint showing their iris, showing my findings on the iris, and I also include an overlay just for them to kind of see how we map the eye. And I find this is very educational because when I help a client, I don't want them just to know what I'm finding and what they need to do. I want them to learn this. I want them to empower themselves because I think in the natural healing field, unlike allopathic medicine, we don't want repeat patients. Well, we don't want any patients. Patients are in the field of allopathy. We don't want repeat clients. We want our clients to come to us. We want to educate them, okay? And then they can have the empowerment to go forward and maintain their health. We should have health and bodies in a physical form that we don't have to worry about. We're just using this vehicle to experience life and all of the beauty that life brings to us. So that's all going to help us raise our consciousness and to learn the lessons we're put on this planet to learn. They say that Earth is a school for many of us as souls. And we came into this incarnation with things that we needed to experience to help us learn. So we need to learn. And part of that learning is to listen to our bodies, try to figure out what our body is telling us, and the study of iridology is perfect in helping us do that in a non-invasive way. I mean, I am amazed every time I look at an iris when a client sends me their iris photos. And when I do an iris analysis, that's the first thing I do. Before I even look at their health questionnaire, I like to see what I can find on their iris. And it just, to me, it confirms the beauty of iridology, because reading the health questionnaire shortly after, I look at the iris of that individual, they match up. It's a non-invasive way to have your own body telling you what it's dealing with. We don't need to expose ourselves to radiation or any kind of dyes that are so harming to the body. We can just do this by looking at our beautiful irises. All right, so coming back to your second question. So anyway, Anna, what I would recommend, in Germany, like, I know homeopathy is much more accepted in Germany compared to the United States. From my understanding, so is iridology. So I would imagine that there should be some iridologists in Germany. I've heard Dr. Morris talk about German iridology, and I can't remember exactly what he said about it. Maybe there are some slight differences between the science of iridology as those in Germany teach it, maybe compared to elsewhere. But I know Dr. Jensen's second book on iridology has so many different pictures, and the more images you can look at, the more you'll get acquainted. I mean, study as many photos as you can. Go onto YouTube. So many people out there are putting out iridology types of videos, free for everybody. And you just kind of have to immerse yourself in this, because for me it took time. I had to look at a lot of different iris photos. I mean, when I went to medical school, they didn't know anything about iridology. I mean, even in the educational field I teach in, nobody knows about iridology. If they do know about it, I'm sure they, as many people that, are in love with the religion of scientism, which is kind of mainstream science, which doesn't focus on the truth. It only focuses on the agendas of the government and the powers that should not be that control what's published in scientific journals. But I won't go down that path right now. So a lot of, what we use in learning about how we can understand the human body, that information is occulted. It's not readily known. And so many people just don't know about it. So we kind of have to investigate on our own and find out how we can best read the iris. It would be great, though, if you could find other people nearby, maybe do a meetup, start your own meetup group. When I moved to near Seattle, Washington, I started my own meetup group because I was trying to find like-minded individuals. So actually, I was looking for other people that were anarchists, because as my shirt that I'm wearing today, I am an anarchist, and anarchy does not mean chaos. Anarchy simply means without, archon, without any rulers. So in my opinion, I believe that we are sovereign human beings. We don't need any rulers. We rule ourselves, and that's where it comes down to health, as you all know. With regards to our health, you should not be under the pressure of any controlling body or individual telling you what you need to do with your own health. We need to take charge and take back our health. It's not in the hands of anyone else. It's in our hands. And with our minds, with our thoughts, with our feelings, with what we take into our body, whether it be food or what we see, or what we're hearing, what we're studying, what we're listening to, we control all of that. And so that's probably why all of you are here, is to learn how you can better empower yourself. So just, search for it and immerse yourself in pictures and photographs of the irises And look at all of the different types. Look at the different colors. I mean, there's so many different shades, and each color can correlate to something different. I mean, Dr. Morse talks quite a bit about sulfur in the iris, which is often due to exposure from sulfa drugs or sulfur in various food items. Usually the natural sulfur in our foods isn't really what's causing the sulfur in the eye. In my opinion, I often find it's from prolonged antibiotic use, unfortunately. But yeah, study all of that. Look at lots of different pictures. Dr. Morse has lots of great free videos as well. But there are some really good videos where they really break it down for you. So that's your first question. Let's come back to your second question, and I just want to see if I have anybody else in the chat room. Okay. So your second question. This is from Anna again. This is very hard for me to write down because it is something I am still struggling with. My mother, 55, was diagnosed 4 years ago with scleroderma. As I am learning, I can see exactly her evolution and why she was diagnosed with it. She had psoriasis when she was 20, depression, and on benzodiazepines from 35. I would totally relate to your video when you're advising to be cautious with them. Yes, be cautious with benzodiazepines. And after that, was diagnosed with scleroderma. She is keeping this condition in check with different drugs. She is not open to the idea of changing her diet. She has deep faith in doctors, zero faith in herself. She has put her life in the hands of physicians. Her adrenals are, of course, burnt, anxiety, and low self-esteem, which could be thyroid. The pineal is down. She has problems sleeping before the diazepines. Her whole system is down. Is there anything you would suggest that I could help her with? Keep in mind she's not open to the idea of changing her diet or taking botanicals. I know, of course, I have to accept her way of seeing things and her trust in allopathic medicine, but it's really hard, especially when I know I am now connecting the dots and I see how we are all brainwashed. My father is also behind her and trusts the doctors. I am trying to take comfort in the fact that this is her journey, but I would like to know if you've had any other suggestions. And thank you for reading my long email. Well, thank you, Anna, for sending in this very heartfelt request. Yeah, that's so challenging when you're dealing with a family member, someone you love, family member or friend. And you see how their actions and their trust in this entity that we have been brainwashed to trust, how it's hurting us in the long run. Scleroderma, the allopathic medical community describes that as an autoimmune disease. It's basically affecting the connective tissues, which are the tissues that connect all of our tissues together, like our surface epithelium of our skin is connected to the deeper tissues in the body, like the muscle tissue, the bone tissue, by way of connective tissue. And with scleroderma, these tissues become hardened. And as we know, any hardened tissue often is due to congestion, things building up in those interstitial spaces, causing hardening of the skin and other structures in the body. And scleroderma is just a really challenging disease to deal with when someone's diagnosed with it. Okay, so once again, we know that autoimmune disease is, what is an autoimmune disease? It's when the immune system attacks itself. Why would our immune system attack itself? In my opinion, and I know Dr. Morse mentions he doesn't believe in autoimmune diseases, he classifies it as the doctors just don't know what the hell's going on. And I kind of agree with him. I think there probably is a reason our immune system, if our immune cells are attacking that tissue, it's probably because there's abnormal proteins attached to the cells because of the congestion, the interstitial congestion in those spaces. And the immune system looks at it as foreign, and it starts releasing these inflammatory cytokines and other immune agents to cause this tissue to become radically inflamed. So really it comes back to, again, what Dr. Morse and myself keep saying over and over again: we have to cleanse out those interstitial spaces. And it's a simple answer, but it's a challenging thing to do, especially when you're dealing with people that have been programmed to think it can't be that simple, and I need a drug to suppress these symptoms, but not get to the heart of what's really going on. And a lot of times with these autoimmune diseases, they use immunosuppressive drugs. They actually suppress the body's immune system. And when you suppress the immune system, obviously you become more at risk for infections. And a lot of these immunosuppressive drugs, especially things like prednisone, they're so hard on the adrenals. And if your mother already was dealing with anxiety and, adrenal weakness, this definitely is not helping. So, I'm very fortunate, I guess, because I have, my dad especially, in today's Father's Day, I love you, Dad. My dad has a lot of faith in me, and he's had some health issues. And that's part of the reason why I'm back in the Midwest. But he has faith in the advice I'm giving him, and he's doing great right now. It wasn't always like that, though. I mean, I remember when I first found the path of natural healing, and this was back in my 20s, right? I mean, I'm 46 now, and I was in medical school in my early 20s, and I even did an internship with Joel Furman, doing water fasting of all things, and learning about natural hygiene. And I remember coming back from that with a lot of I've got all of these great ideas and I want to help everybody heal in a more natural way. And I could see just how toxic all of the allopathic drugs were. So that's where kind of my shift was occurring. And I was getting away from the vaccines and the pharmaceuticals, and I was just looking to nature, really. I found no use in allopathic drugs. I couldn't see a reason for them. We don't have a drug deficiency. We have a nature deficiency. And so I wanted to bring my family on board, and back then it was challenging. They weren't receptive to it. But I stayed consistent to what my heart was telling me to do. And that's all I can say for you, Anna, is you have to be consistent on your path. The people in our life may or may not agree with us. And if we love these individuals and they can see our true heart, our true essence, and they respect us enough, perhaps they'll slowly start to become open to this field, this path that is the path of truth. It is the path aligning with natural law. So all I can tell you is try to help your mother in subtle ways. Remind her that we didn't always have these drugs, these medical agents for diseases, but also at the same time, we didn't have a lot of these diseases. So could there be a correlation? Could it be that when allopathic medicine started to come on board, so did all of these other problems? Dr. Morris says that allopathic medicine is the #1 cause of death. Even in their own journals, the Journal of the American Medical Association, they have their own research that puts medical mistakes, allopathic medical mistakes, as the 3rd leading cause of death, behind heart disease and cancer. But why do heart disease and cancer exist? And it comes back to a lot of pharmacological agents which have these side effects that affect inflammation in our blood vessels, which can lead to cardiovascular events like strokes and heart attacks. It also creates toxicity in our interstitial spaces. When this toxicity is not removed, that leads to prolonged inflammation and then tissue change, and then you start seeing abnormal cells dividing out of control. So it comes back to allopathy once again. We have gone off course. We are not in alignment with natural law. There's only one law that man, woman and man, and all life are bound to, and that is the law of nature. And we will, either lose ourselves in this facade that man's law, and when I say man's law, I'm talking government, I'm talking healthcare, I'm talking everything that we think we are bound to. We have to step out of that box that's suffocating us all, and it's enslaving us. I mean, it's truly enslaving us. We're being programmed to be good slaves on this planet because that helps the powers that should not be control us more effectively. They need to have a properly controlled species because we'll keep working for them. Working, paying taxes, giving to them all of our hard work and the earnings that we get from that work. The majority of that goes to these entities that we've been programmed to think are benefiting us. They're not benefiting us at all. I mean, anybody out there, anybody in the chat room right now, can you tell me one thing the doctors have done to enhance your life, to make you not feel better? Because feeling, that's easy. I mean, you can take cocaine and feel good, right? And I'm not saying to take cocaine. I'm not telling you to do anything like that. But to really enhance your health, is there anything out there allopathy has to enhance your health? Because the only thing that has made me feel amazing is when I did nothing but fruit for 6 months. I remember when I first went on the natural hygiene path and I was like gung-ho about it. I'm like, I'm going to do nothing but fruit for 6 months. I think I had some green juices here and there and maybe a couple of green salads every now and then. But I was so high on fruit and I had the most amazing energy I've ever had in my life. It's when I started jogging. I mean, I started doing, when I started jogging, then I couldn't stop. I kept going and going and going, and I was up to doing like 30 miles a week. And I just felt this pure energy, which allopathic medicine can't give that to you. That pure energy is already inside of you, but it's all hidden. It's all been suppressed and congested by poor diet, by chemicals, by nonsense that we're programmed to think we need. We don't need these things. But yet, everybody just hail to the physician. Oh, the doctor, they know everything. And these doctors have pretty big egos. I mean, some of them are decent people, but a lot of them, they think they've earned some kind of right to talk down to us. And that's what I really want to put an end to. We need to stand up to these individuals. And that's why I'm teaching my online course, my online human anatomy and physiology course, because I think every human being out there needs to know how the vehicle that their soul is utilizing on this planet during this incarnation, how that vehicle is best run. I mean, people know more about their damn cars than they know about how their human body functions. We need to have that foundational understanding. So I thought to myself, why am I only teaching this to people going into allopathy? And that's where most of my students are going. And even though I try to throw in those little nuggets of truth about natural law and natural healing to them, hoping that as they become doctors and nurses, they can be somewhat influenced by that, open to a new realm, I don't feel like I'm reaching enough people. So that's why I wanted to make this course available to everybody. And, I remember this was probably my 5th or 6th year of teaching. I had this woman, I think I was in my late 20s or early 30s at the time, but I had this woman in my course. She was in her 50s, and English was her second language. And she was taking my course, which is a really hard course. I mean, and I say it's really hard, but it's not that hard. I mean, anybody can understand their human body. But usually, when you add the lab and the lecture and you're taking it in a certain time frame, students find it very challenging when they're college students. So not too many people take my course for fun, although I think it's a lot of fun. But she was taking my course for the only reason was so that when she went to the doctor, she could better understand what the doctor was telling her. and she wanted to know how her body worked. That is a woman who embraces truth and loves herself enough to take the time to learn, what does my body do? How does it function? And when you learn how it functions and you see how simple it is, and a lot of you already know Dr. Morse and his teachings, and if you don't know Dr. Morse, get on his YouTube channel. He's got so many free videos where he talks about the simplicity of healing. You really can learn quite a bit from him. But, you know, that's, I think, something that, Anna, coming back to your question, you just have to stay on your own path, and you have to be the best example you can be. And not everybody's going to follow suit, unfortunately. But you can still bless them and remind them that there really is only one truth. There is only one law, natural law, and health falls underneath that. Our health is part of nature. We are part of nature. Nature is that which, when you go outside, it comes from the earth. And we, by ingesting that from the earth in its purest form, especially the fruits are so beautiful because they are just simply the gifts of the tree or the bush or the plant. And they're filled with so many phytonutrients, minerals, simple sugars for energy, amino acids. It's got everything. And astringent properties to cleanse our cells, to keep those spaces around our cells as cleansed as possible, which makes the cells healthy. Cells have to be in the proper environment. So in my course, in Chapter 3, we talk about the cellular environment. We describe the fluids around the cells and how that impacts cell health. So, any other questions for me? I think somebody is messaging me. I don't know if I saw something come in from Diana Cliff. If you want to join my live Q&A, Diana, feel free to do so. If you have a question, you can post it. I don't know if you want me to read this, Diana, but she's saying what's confusing is that some are posting that fruit is both fructose and glucose, and therefore it does require insulin. They even posted the breakdown of fruit showing how much is fructose and how much is glucose. Is that accurate? So when it comes to fruit, you know, there are different types of sugars depending on the fruit. So some fruits are more fructose rich, some are more glucose rich. Some even have sucrose, like sugarcane, sucrose, which is a disaccharide of a fructose and a glucose covalently bonded. Now sucrose is broken apart by the enzyme sucrase, which is a brush border enzyme in the lining of our small intestine. And so eventually the simple sugars have to be broken down into their smallest subunits, the monosaccharides, which there are 3 primary monosaccharides we get in our diet. Glucose is the most common one. Like all of the starches are all only long chains of glucose. And then we have fructose, which is fruit sugar. And then we have galactose. Galactose plus glucose form lactose, which is milk sugar, which we should only be getting milk sugar when we're babies and we're breastfeeding. Because when we're done breastfeeding, we really shouldn't be drinking the milk, especially of another species. It's so congesting. But with that said, galactose, glucose, and fructose are the 3 monosaccharides that we absorb from our small intestine into our blood. The blood then takes all of those simple sugars and sends them to the liver. Let me get back to Diana. She's messaging me again. She's trying to watch my Q&A but missed it. I'm doing the Q&A right now. I'm just going to type that for her. Letting her know that she can join us so she can hear my answer. Maybe if I post the link. I don't know if I can share this. Is it possible for me to share this? I don't know. Maybe I'll just share my page. Sorry, doing some live technical work with you all. But coming back to the simple sugars. So we have those 3 simple sugars. They're absorbed into the blood by way of the hepatic portal circulatory route, which is the pathway that takes blood from our small intestine directly to our liver. Those nutrients, those simple sugars, will be processed by the liver. Now the liver, what it does, it primarily deals with excess glucose. So if we have too much glucose, and that would impact our blood sugar levels or our blood glucose levels going above the higher end of that homeostatic range, it can store the excess as glycogen. The liver can also convert glucose into other things, but the way that I teach about these simple sugars in the body is that most of the fructose and the galactose are converted into glucose. Now with that said, fructose, which I've read this in research articles, does not need insulin to be absorbed into cells. Glucose does. So there's not a lot of fructose in the blood, but it doesn't require any insulin whatsoever. Glucose does require insulin to be absorbed into our cells. So let me see if I'm addressing her question correctly. Yeah, so Diana, the amount of fructose and the amount of glucose is going to vary depending on the fruit in question. So every fruit has a different ratio of these simple sugars. I mean, the monosaccharides and the disaccharides are sweet. So these are what we typically call sugars. The disaccharides being lactose, sucrose, and maltose. The monosaccharides, again, glucose, fructose, and galactose. So all the disaccharides have to be broken down into monosaccharides before they can be absorbed. And they do go via the hepatic portal circuit to the liver before they go into our general circulation. And then glucose primarily is going to need insulin for absorption. Fructose does not, so we don't need fructose to get that absorbed into a cell, which is why Dr. Morse talks about how the high fruit diet doesn't really impact even the type 1 diabetics. So, you know, there's always been a big fear of people with diabetes eating too much fruit. I haven't seen this to be the case as far as it impacting their blood sugar levels. In fact, I had a client, a type 1 diabetic client, when I was working with Dr. Morse, and using primarily fruit, he was able to get off insulin and stay away from insulin, which is unheard of, right? I mean, they usually tell you that type 2 diabetes mellitus, that's the one that's more easily affected by changes in lifestyle and diet. But the type 1, they usually say, oh, they're going to be on insulin their whole lives. Not the case. And guess what helps these individuals? Fruit. Part of which could be the fact that fructose doesn't require insulin. And so you're still able to help with those levels of providing energy for the cells by bypassing the need for the glucose that requires the insulin. And in type 1 diabetics, their beta cells in their pancreas are simply not secreting the insulin. So that's why their blood glucose levels get so high. So hopefully that has helped answer that question. I don't know if anybody else has any other questions. Let's see. I am hoping that I am still recording. I am not sure if I'm still recording. I looked at something that said something went wrong. So if anybody's here and you can still hear me, will you let me know? Because it looks like I'm recording, but I'm not sure if anybody can hear me or see me. Because it does seem to be awful quiet in here. I might end the video and then maybe start it up again and just kind of save what I've done so far. Sorry about that. Hopefully I didn't lose everybody. I'm back again. I thought there was a problem with my video. It wasn't I saw something that said there was an error, and so I didn't know if I was just talking and talking and talking and nobody heard me. And then like right after I closed, I saw people telling me they could hear me. So I'm back. Hopefully those of you that were watching the video previously can come back. I'm going to go grab some water. I'm getting kind of parched, but I'll be back in just a second. Oh, look, somebody came back. Give me a second. I'm going to grab some water, and we will continue our discussion. All right, so I am back, and I needed some water, so I'm drinking it right now. I will, when I make the recording of this video, I will, you know, attach the 2 video segments of this live broadcast. But anyone that was watching previously, anyone have any questions for me? I don't want to end prematurely, but I want to hopefully help as many people as possible if you do have any questions. I did address the 2 in my previous recording. I addressed the 2 questions that were emailed to me by Anna and Peter, I believe. If not, maybe we'll have a little bit of a discussion until questions start rolling in, because I have a little bit of time here with you all. Talking about taking our power back as natural health care workers, coaches, detoxification specialists, naturopaths, whatever you may be. I think that one thing that is empowering for us as we're working with clients is having faith in what we're doing and living the example of what we're doing. All of those are really important because they're going to really send a message to those around us about right living. Oh, the dogs were doing so good, and then they start being crazy again. And I love these puppies. Hi, buddy. Hello. I love you, buddy. Okay, but we're not playing right now. So we have to have right living, which, you know, as those of you that are here, detoxification specialists who have studied with Dr. Morris perhaps in ISOD, or even just watch all of his videos, I consider you natural health students. And as you learn about how the human body works and you're living according to the laws of nature with regards to diet, and what does that mean? Well, as humans, we are structured physiologically and anatomically to thrive on a diet rich in fruits and vegetables. The plants are really there meant to be our fuel. Humans, we are biologically frugivores, right? So frugivores, what does that mean? We thrive on a diet of primarily fruit and green leafy vegetables. And the young green leafy vegetables, the cellulose in these plant cells more easily digested, less likely to cause a lot of the bloating and the gassiness that people get sometimes when they do a lot of greens. So like young kale would be more easy to digest compared to more fully mature kale, right? So, and how is it that we are biologically, anatomically, and physiologically adapted to these foods? Well, I mean, look at how our structure is. You know, in anatomy and physiology, structure begets function. So how something looks can give you an indication of what it does. The only organ you kind of have a hard time figuring that out with is the brain, because the brain looks like gray mush. But every other organ, you know, you can kind of figure out what it does. So like we have hands that can grasp onto fruits like bananas, and we can peel off the banana itself. Our little canine teeth, not meant for biting into a beautiful cow. Our canine teeth are meant for biting into an apple or another fleshy fruit. We have color vision, so we can see colors. And that gives us an indication to determine whether or not a fruit is ripe. So, you know, something that has the color that denotes that it's truly rich in a lot of these sweet monosaccharides or sweet sugars, and its nutrient content is maximized, we can visually receive clues of that. And then beyond that, we look at various enzymes and what's being released throughout our lives. Like, for instance, most humans don't have lactase, the enzyme that breaks down milk sugar, still functioning. So that's why a lot of people are lactose intolerant. I would imagine most people should be lactose intolerant. It's just that most individuals are ignoring the symptoms, or maybe they're more minimal. Because lactose, which we should be breaking down into galactose and glucose, it can become an irritant when it's not adequately broken down in the intestinal tract. And people get, you know, digestive complaints and whatnot. Well, there's no reason any of us should be consuming a lot of milk sugar, because we really shouldn't be getting too much milk after we've been weaned off of it. And that enzyme naturally declines like after the age of 2 in most of us, which is true for a lot of mammals, to be honest with you. So anyway, with that said, physiologically we are meant to consume a diet that is mostly fruits and green leafy vegetables. Can we eat other foods? Yeah, of course we can, because we can do it. I mean, people go out every day and eat a bunch of nonsense. Just because they're capable of doing it doesn't mean that they should be doing it. There's a big difference. Just because you can eat dead animal flesh doesn't mean you should be eating dead animal flesh. Just because you can eat candy that is filled with an ingredient label list of chemicals that people can't even pronounce doesn't mean you should be eating these chemicals, because all of that stuff, the denatured proteins that have been really denatured by the heat and are no longer in a natural form, and the chemicals that are in the junk food, all of that stuff, that unnatural essence coming into our body, is work that our body has to take care of. And when we're taking care of those denatured proteins and those chemicals, and it's primarily the liver that's doing all of that, we're not doing other things that we should be doing. Like, our liver does a lot of different things for us, and we're taking away its energy to do those other types of detoxification duties. And when this type of diet, this unnatural diet, becomes chronic, that's when we see the problems we're having. And yes, some of those problems, you know, they result in you going to the doctor and being diagnosed with something. And when you're diagnosed with something, what happens? You get a pharmacological agent to suppress the symptoms that are making you feel uneasy. And these pharmaceutical drugs, when you look at the insert, if your doctor is nice enough to go over that with you, you will see comes with a long list of symptoms. So you had symptoms, you took a drug, now you have more symptoms, which you'll probably have to take another drug for. Do we see the insanity of all of this? I mean, it's quite crazy how unnatural we have come to be, which is why I am a big proponent of helping us free ourselves from these unnatural types of ruling bodies that are limiting our freedom. It's what I was talking about earlier, that a lot of us just blindly follow the suggestions or the recommendations, or even we're forced to follow in the case of government, you know, because if you don't follow the government and their laws, their made-up opinions, you can be incarcerated, you can be killed. I mean, it's insanity, right? It's insanity how much we're controlled, which is why I am a peaceful anarchist, although we're getting to the point where we may be forced to defend ourselves because these ruling entities are becoming a little bit more, how can I say, I don't know, threatening to our ability to be free. You know, I know a lot of my listening audience isn't in the United States, but you know, the United States, we call ourselves the land of the free. Are we really free? I mean, what kind of freedoms do we really have? I mean, man's law is all over the place, right? And it's just kind of I mean, even like what I do, you know, I'm a naturopathic doctor. I'm not licensed though, so there are things I can't say. There are things, you know, and also if somebody's sick, I mean, I think of all the people I work with, and a lot of the people I work with have health issues, legitimate health issues. And I talk to them, and I know there's an easy way to fix what they're dealing with, but, you know, again, like what Anna was saying earlier, everybody believes in their doctor, and they feel like they're wearing a badge because they can say, well, my doctor said I have to do this. And that abdicates their own responsibility for taking care of their own health. We can't put our health in the hands of anybody else except for us. It's our body, it's our vehicle. We are responsible for its essence of expressing life. No one else is responsible. And no damn doctor out there is going to give a rat's ass if you're constipated or if you have any type of illness. I mean, they're just there to, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's some doctors that are very caring. I mean, I went into the medical field because I really wanted to help people. I just realized that pharmaceutical drugs and surgeries weren't the way to do it. There is another way, and it's called nature. It's called natural law, natural hygiene, naturopathy. That's healing. That's livelihood. The same foods that are going to help you heal are going to also help you live an amazing, abundant life. So even after you're done healing, if you stick with a frugivore type diet, high fruit, high vegetable, you're going to be able to do so many things that you thought you were not able to do, because that's what the control systems want. They don't want vibrant human beings. They want controlled, suppressed human beings that are easy to manipulate, easy to brainwash. I mean, they brainwashed us all to think that we should pay taxes, that we should, what are some other crazy things? We should get vaccinated. We should, I mean, what do vaccines do to us? I think they're dumbing our brains as well. Vaccines are creating systemic inflammatory reactions, which not everybody will express as full-blown out symptoms, but some susceptible individuals might, especially those of us that are lymphatically congested. That's why iridology is so important. I mean, if you're a mother out there and you're thinking about vaccinating your child, go to an iridologist first and check the iris. I mean, first of all, if you're thinking about vaccinating your child, talk to me and let me tell you what a vaccine does in the human body when it's been injected through the skin. They're not only injecting an antigen, a component of a virus or any kind of pathogen. Sometimes they're live viruses, by the way. They call those attenuated viruses, but other times they're just little pieces. And what they're trying to evoke is an immune response. And in the evoking the immune response, the hope is that they're going to create an antibody response. And then these antibodies, when they're present in our blood plasma, they're protecting us. That's the whole theory behind the vaccine. But first of all, they're exposing that antigen or that attenuated virus to us in an unnatural way. So it's bypassing the natural mechanisms by which those pathogens would have entered our body, like through the nasal mucosa or through the oral cavity or elsewhere in our mucosal lining. That's usually how these pathogens gain entry into our body. Or if we have a cut open of our skin, when our skin is not intact and it's cut, that's a site where you could get pathogen exposure. We're bypassing those natural ways of entering them. They're going right through via a needle into where our blood is, okay, our sacred blood. But, and by the way, in those natural ways of exposure, you're prepping your body to respond. So in our mucosal lining, we have what is called MALT, mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue. You bypass by all of that when you get a vaccine. We have our tonsils. The tonsils also part of MALT. They're helping to protect the mucosal linings in the pharynx, the nasopharynx and the oropharynx. So we have the pharyngeal tonsil, the palatine tonsils, the lingual tonsils, all there to protect us. And those tonsils have lymphatic nodules within them that can fight off those pathogens so easily before we would ever have it into our bodily fluids, into our blood. That's what we're trying to prevent entry into. And the vaccine just goes right on in. Let's get these agents inside of there and let's see what happens. So that puts the body on high alert because this is sacred fluid, our blood. And when you inject something into that bodily fluid, your immune system is going to be pretty up in arms because that is a bodily fluid that it tries to protect every way possible. And so that's what we've done. We've entered into our blood in an unnatural way. But that's not the only thing that's gaining access to our bodily fluids, to our blood especially. No, 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 no. The pharmacy companies, these pharmacological empires, have decided that the regular immune response isn't good enough. We need to make this immune response that we're trying to evoke within the human body even stronger. So we're going to add to those antigens or to those weakened viruses, we're going to add what are called adjuvants. An adjuvant, something like mercury, or, oh God, I mean, the list of chemicals that are under what they call an adjuvant are a lot of dangerous chemicals, mercury being one, thimerosal. But I've read like fetal cells from human fetuses are in adjuvants, are in some vaccines. I'm trying to come up with the whole list, and I should have had the list handy, but I'm sure a lot of you have read these lists, and there's a cute little fly in front of me. And they evoke an even stronger immune response. And what is this immune response that they're evoking? What will this immune response do? Well, with most immune responses, we have cells called lymphocytes. Sorry, I'm looking at this. It could be a mosquito. We have cells called lymphocytes that release chemicals called cytokines. And there are different types of cytokines, different types of interleukins, different types of chemicals that are released as part of this immune response. And they can create an inflammatory reaction because they're fighting off what they think is pathogenic. And that creates inflammation, right? And a common thing that happens when somebody gets vaccinated is they get a fever. And it's so funny how they think, oh, that's normal. You know, my baby was vaccinated. Oh, yeah, it's normal that they get a fever. They're crying. They're in pain. Fevers are not normal. They're there to protect us when something is going very dangerously wrong. But it's not normal, and to evoke a fever unnaturally is dangerous, in my opinion. I mean, you know, fevers, when they occur naturally, let them play out because that's natural. And the fever is there to raise the body's body temperature so that you can protect yourself. And it also helps tissue regeneration occur more easily. It also limits pathogen replication. But evoking these mechanisms in an unnatural way, very dangerous. And plus, the inflammation, not only does it just cause possible things like fever, but it creates tissue damage, and it's also affecting our cells. And a lot of our cells in our body are classified as either stable cells or labile cells, meaning that they can regenerate, they can replicate after they've been damaged or killed off. But we do have some permanent cells. These are cells that cannot replicate, and those include our cardiac muscle tissue, skeletal muscle cells, and our neurons. Now, Dr. Russell Blaylock, who is a neurosurgeon, medical doctor, by the way, has shown that a lot of these adjuvants can cross the blood-brain barrier. And that will allow them to evoke this immune response within another sacred environment, which is the environment around our brain tissue. And our brain tissue contains neurons, and our neurons are, I need to get this mosquito out of here. Our neurons cannot regenerate very easily. Yes, the axons of the neurons can if they're cut, but that's not what we're doing here. We're not cutting axons. So when Peter, who was the first question I answered earlier in this video, he was talking about sensory nerve being affected in his ear, in the vestibular cochlear nerve, because he had some brain trauma that affected his hearing, and he had some hearing loss. I believe that our neurons, if they're relatively intact, and it looked like structurally most of his conductive system of hearing was okay, like the auditory ossicles and whatnot, they seem to be in, I think his neurons could regenerate. But when we talk about the inflammatory response and these neurons being chronically inflamed, and then, you know, when we think about these little kids getting all of these vaccinations, they're not just getting one, they're getting cocktails, and they're getting them done repetitively. And all of this affecting the neuronal tissue in their brain. Is it no wonder there is a lot of people reporting autistic types of symptoms shortly after their child gets vaccinated? I mean, I personally, within a short time frame, dealt with 3. I had 3 clients within probably a 2 or 3 month time span that were all autistic, some of them quite severely autistic. Shortly after, and they all happened to be the same vaccine, the MMR. I asked all 3 of them. MMR vaccine, days later, shut down. One child was so heavily affected by this inflammation in his brain that he was banging his head repetitively against the wall. I mean, that's how much pain he had in his little 6-year-old or 5-year-old brain. And it was just totally affecting the entire family. And what can these people do about it? Nothing, because these vaccines are required by law. These children cannot have education if they refuse them. So what do we say to that? What do we say to that? Well, are there other options? And that's where we all have to kind of start stepping up as a community. We have to create options, because, you know, the regular education system, especially in my country, in the United States, in my opinion, I don't call it public education, I call it public indoctrination, because all we're doing is setting these children up to becoming good tax slaves in the future. I mean, they have to take government classes, and they have to learn their version of history. I mean, there's so much information that children don't get in school, and they learn things that they really don't need. You know, what they should learn is how to plant a garden, how to be self-sufficient, and how to eat a healthy diet. And they should learn how their human body works. But a lot of them don't learn those things in state-funded education systems. So why would you want to expose your child to things that could cause lifelong inflammatory issues in their body, just so they can go into an indoctrination system that's going to brainwash them? So we all need to kind of think about that. I don't know if anybody's here. I'm not getting any comments in the discussion board, so hopefully I don't have another faulty video, but I kind of went on a little bit of a rant there. Sorry. I get a little bit fueled up because I make these videos on Sundays after I watch Mark Passio. He has a website called What on Earth is Happening, and I'll put that in the link, and I'll probably put it on the screen as I edit this video. And every Sunday at, I think it's 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or is it 2 p.m. my time? I think it's 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. He does a live recording of a topic, which he will announce, and then he takes calls in the last hour. Last week, I was actually one of his callers, and I talked about vaccinations. And he's a passionate individual, and some people find him hard to listen to because he has a lot of anger. And when you look at the state of humanity, folks, it's no wonder why, because we all should be angry that we've allowed our society and, you know, everything around us to come to where it is today. I mean, people think, oh, I'm free, things are good, life is good. We acquiesce, we just accept. Things are not good. People are dying. People are, you know, like Anna and her mother, these doctors are just being looked upon as gods. And if they say you should do something, that's what you should do. Don't listen to somebody that gets their research elsewhere, like from someone like me, you know. I mean, what do I know? I've only gone to medical school, and I, you know, was in a PhD program for immunology, and I've got a master's degree in biochemistry, and I'm a naturopathic doctor. What do I know? I mean, there's still a lot more for me to know, right? I don't think I know everything, but I do look at things that make sense, and I use common sense. I haven't had my common sense sucked out of me yet. And I don't know why. Maybe it's because I've never gotten the flu vaccine, because that never seemed like a good idea, in my opinion. I didn't understand why there was even a flu vaccine, because A, the flu changes every season. B, getting the flu is not that big of a deal. And now people always say, oh, there are some people that, you know, the flu is a big deal. Well, those people should detoxify themselves. They should probably be making some lifestyle changes, because you shouldn't have a body where the flu is going to kill you. It's a simple viral agent that who even knows where it came from, right? I think it's just, there's a lot I think we need to start questioning. And anyway, it's about 7:30. I don't see too much activity on the discussion board, and maybe I've scared a few people away. I don't know. But I appreciate all of you that had posted earlier, and thank you to those of you that emailed me questions at PattyLoggerMD. That's where you can send me anything that you're interested in. Please go through that route, because your question might get lost if you send it to me like in Messenger or in another format. So I'm trying to kind of keep everything organized. During the week, it's hard for me to kind of remember where all of these messages are going to, because I'm usually pretty busy with my own students during that time. Anyway, I'm going to stop this, and I will post the recording shortly after. I hope you all have a wonderful evening. I hopefully have inspired some of you to kind of start looking at our society at large. Check out Mark Passio's website, What on Earth is Happening. And you'll meet me there every Sunday before you meet me here every Sunday, hopefully. All right, bye.